All right, our speaker tonight, he lives in Midland now. I met him in treatment, and I was detoxing out. This was during my alcohol runs, and I hated him. Oh, I wanted to kill him. I think I want to whisper in his ear at lunch one time, like, I'm going to tie you down with the sheets. I'm going to beat you with a sock with a bar of soap in it. Because he was just happy. There was a brightness about him. And I was miserable. And I really didn't want to get sober that time. I had another run in me. Shortly relapsed, probably 3 months after getting out of treatment, or 3 months after entering treatment. And he was one of the biggest. He was there for me when Emily had threatened everybody. And he was actually probably my biggest inspiration to get sober, because in my mind I was like, in all seriousness, if this junkie can get sober, so can I. But today I love him like a brother. We end up moving to sober living together. And he lived with me here in San Angelo for about 6 months. I got ordained just to marry him and his wife. He's more than a friend. He's part of the family now, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So with that, I introduce Nate Isaacs.
Good evening, mates. My name's Nate, and I'm a grateful recovered alcoholic. Sorry, my buddy dared me to do that, so said introduce yourself in an Australian accent. So we have a lot of fun in recovery. We take this deal deadly serious, because it is, but, you know, as the book says, we're not a glum lot. And as that preamble talked about, too, you know, that there's that deadly earnestness underneath. This shit is serious, but, you know, there's that levity to us as well. We definitely have a really good time in sobriety. You know, everything I thought that I would have got through drugs and alcohol is what I've actually gotten through this program. So again, my name's Nate. I'm a grateful recovered alcoholic, and God saw fit to separate me from alcohol and all of its ugly cousins on July 25th of 2018, and for that I'm forever indebted. Again, man, how about that preamble? That was awesome. You know, unfortunately here, I'm just going to start with this shit. Unfortunately, I cuss a little bit in my story. I get a little bit passionate, and I talk about drugs because that's just part of the honesty, and this isn't a closed meeting. And so I don't have to focus on the singleness of purpose, so I can be honest about my story. But unfortunately, there's a watered down message that goes around in AA these days, and it seems like people are too afraid to hurt feelings and walk on eggshells because they don't want to tell it like it is. And that's not the message that was carried to me. That's not the message that the book has. And I love that preamble because that kicks it off perfectly. It just kind of keeps it real. But we'll get to that when we get to that. So we'll kind of start at the beginning. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, what I've learned through my academic studies to call a lower social economic status, which just means I grew up poor as shit. My dad left when I was 10 months old. My mom struggled. I had an older brother, so she worked, full time to take care of us. So I found myself kind of running the streets a lot. It's kind of where I grew up, how I learned how to be a man, what I thought was, what a real man was supposed to be, were the ideals that I picked up from the streets. You know what I mean? The hustling, the tough guy, all that type of shit that I thought made me a real man. But so even when I was real young, it talk about alcohol, genetic predisposition, all this kind of stuff, whatever. All I know is that before I ever picked up a drink or a drug, I was uncomfortable in my own skin. Right, I was already just dissatisfied, irritable, restless, discontent. I didn't like who I was, didn't ever feel like I fit in with anybody, wore lots of different masks to try to impress different people, and never had any real true identity of who I was. It was always, how I felt was based on how I thought you felt about me, and that was never very good, or at least it didn't meet my, entitled standards. So yeah, I kind of ran around the streets, and that's just what I learned. That was, that's where I got my attention and my guidance and all that kind of stuff. And I was always just a squirrely little shit, you know what I mean? I was always getting in trouble. I was always causing mayhem, always looking for something to make me feel different, and I mean, for me, I always say I was addicted to everything from hamburgers to heroin because it didn't matter what it was, just something to make me feel different. Food, women, money, drugs, work, whatever. Anything to allow me to not have to sit with myself because that was just extremely uncomfortable for me. So, I once had 11 years sober, but I lost that when I turned 12. I had to. I'm sorry. I had to. So yeah, on the real, when I turned 12 years old, that's when I first, found alcohol and started smoking weed and all that kind of stuff. And let me back it up even before that, just to kind of talk about that. The book talks about how the alcohol, the drugs, it's but a symptom. Right, the drugs and alcohol are just they're a symptom. Well, what's really going on is me. My internal condition is out of whack. It's called the spiritual malady. It just means spiritually disaligned. Right, so I'm just not lined up spiritually. It manifests in emotional and physical things. And for me, alcohol is how it manifests most destructively. Alcohol and drugs. But with that restless and irritable discontent, man, before I ever started drinking and using heavily, I tried to commit suicide. I took a bottle of pills, did all that, and washed it down with some Beef Eater's dry gin that my mom had in the cabinet. That shit is nasty. I had to go to the hospital, get my stomach pumped, all that kind of stuff. So I was, discontent enough to where I didn't want to live before I ever picked up a drink or a drug. And in our program, we talk about, once we get to the 10th step, we're placed in the position of neutrality, right? We're not for or against it. I'm not crusading. I'm not against alcohol. I'm not trying to convince any of you to get or stay sober. That's for each of you to determine for yourself if you need or want help. And if you do, we have a fucking solution that is guaranteed to work if you work it out of the first 164 pages. But shit, we'd hate to sober up an innocent man, So for me, I was grateful for drugs and alcohol because it saved my life for a long time. Because I would have killed myself. I would have tried to complete that task that I had tried before that if it wasn't for that. For me, it was relief in the beginning. It kind of saved me from that insanity, my way of thinking, my true disease, what centers in my mind, what's in my spirit, that real crux of the disease. It saved me from that. And it worked for a good amount of time. It helped to silence that insanity. So for me, I'm grateful that drugs and alcohol kept me alive long enough to where I can get sober. But of course it faded, and I had the external circumstances, fairly quickly. I was on probation pretty much my whole life. Spent 2.5 years incarcerated, before I even turned 16. I was in my first treatment center when I was 14 years old. It was a year-long program. It was court-ordered, but I got out after 9 months because I convinced my PO. So here, there's orientation phase and then 3 phases, right? So 9 months in, I was still on orientation phase, right? So I should have been like on 3rd phase, getting ready to graduate. But I convinced my PO that he was like, I'm going to recommend to keep you on probation to make sure you finish the program. And I was like, oh, but I'll be done with the program in 3 months. And if you recommend to extend, it'll be another 6 months. And I've been doing so great in here. I don't think that's fair to keep me on probation 3 more months after I'm just fucking running. And so he agreed, and he told the judge, and I bounced that day and didn't go back. But anyways, so, I might have had a problem that I couldn't recognize if I'm in a, year-long inpatient drug and alcohol treatment center at the age of 14. But man, it didn't matter to me. What mattered was that I couldn't handle the voices in my head, the shit that was going on, the screaming, the pain, the fucking anger, all that kind of stuff that was constantly boiling, that would come out in other ways, and violence and aggression, stealing, whatever, came out in all kinds of ways. And the only thing I still knew at that time, the only solution that I had were drugs and alcohol. So I continued to do that. About 4.5 months in, I went AWOL and did, meth and shrooms the first time, and then got picked back up and got, put back in there and all that kind of. Looking back, I don't know what the fuck that PO was thinking, letting me off. But hey, anyways, got out of plan. But yeah, so by the time I'm 16, I'm doing meth and opiates, taking pills, all that kind of stuff. And like I said, I'd spent a lot of time in and out of places. I was in a foster home in Compton, California. At a very early age. It was before that. I think it was 12, 13. But anyways, so my mom, right, my real mom, she just couldn't handle me. And I don't blame her. I I was wild. You know, I was just trying to search for something to satisfy whatever this was that was going on inside of me. So when I was 16, she wanted me to come live with my biological father. And so I came out here to do that, which, you know, my real motive for that was I had just caught my first felony charge. You know what I mean? And so I was kind of trying to get out of California so that I wouldn't have to face that. They ended up dismissing the charges and everything. But even that, there was a felony charge for the amount of alcohol that I had stolen, you know, and I still couldn't see that I was an alcoholic. I'd already been to treatment, you know what I mean, been incarcerated a bunch of times, felony theft for the amount of alcohol I stole. But I'm in denial about my alcoholism, right? So I get here 16. Things don't work out too well with my dad. Whatever, you know, by the time I'm 18, you know, now I'm an IV heroin addict, meth addict, cocaine addict, whatever, and mix it, shoot it. You know, I remember researching, like, is there a way to fucking shoot weed? You know what I mean? Because anything I could get into a rig is what I would do. And things just escalated. You know, the way I drank, the way I used dope, it just constantly got worse and worse and worse. It became more and more and more. And no matter what, it was just never enough. You know what I mean? I could never, it got to that point, and I don't know if it was just physical, psychological tolerance, whatever you want to call it, but it stopped working. It stopped silencing and satisfying that shit that was inside. So now I'm just using this shit so that way I don't get physically sick. I'm stealing to get it. I'm selling dope to get it. I'm running the streets. I'm breaking fucking hearts of everybody around me. The biggest lie I think addicts and alcoholics tell themselves is, I'm not hurting anybody but myself. It's bullshit. I left a tornado, a wake of damage in my path. Anybody I came into contact with, because all I could think about is, what can you do for me? How can I get from you to satisfy what I think I need to be okay inside? So that's a path that I continued on. And like I said, it quit having that, you know, I mean, I'd still be fucked up and stumbling around and all that kind of shit, but I couldn't get that y'all know what I'm talking about, right? That whatever that internal was, an internal condition, I couldn't get that calmed. I couldn't get it satisfied anymore. And there was nothing that would work no matter how hard I try. So within this time, you know, it's all kind of blurry. It's kind of hazy, but I know I moved back to LA for like 5 years or something, and moved to like Ruidoso for like a year. And then like I lived in Lubbock for like 3 years, and then back in Texas. And I've done the math on all these years, and I'm only 34, right? And I'm like, I was 2 years here, 3 years here. I should be like 47, you know what I mean? So I don't know how it all worked. It's like a lot of Xanax, right? Time traveling and shit. I don't know where I was at, what happened. But what I know is that it was a lot of chaos, and it was a lot of heartbreak, you know, homeless, living on the streets, you know, in Los Angeles. Like I said, get in and out of jail, all this different bullshit, man. But I don't know how I would catch a felony charge, and then I don't have any kind of money or any kind of background, but I would work some kind of, run my mouth, get some kind of program or whatever, and get the, you know, deferred adjudication, all that kind of shit, and kind of get it blessed to never, where I had to actually do any serious time. You know, I was sentenced to 2 to 3 years in prison in Los Angeles. So I was supposed to go to Chino, but they deferred it. They had this thing called Prop 36. They don't even have it anymore. They ran out of funding, but they had it at the time, and even that I was using the whole time. But I, you know, the way we do, you know, I worked the system and got it dismissed and all that kind of stuff. But man, it was just such chaos, you know, in being homeless and you know, I've been to 3 different psych wards and countless treatment centers and all that kind of stuff. And none of those places I would go in and I would expect them to fix me, right? Like, you're the treatment center, you're the incarceration, you're the medical team, you're the psych team, you're like, I need help. And nothing would work. And I think it was because my expectations were for these places to just kind of magically fix me. Like, if I go to rehab for 30 days, right, then I'll be fucking cured and I'll come out and then I could drink like a gentleman. You know what I mean? What the problem was is I would go to these places and I wouldn't do a fucking thing while I was there. I wouldn't put in any work myself to actually get to what it takes to be a recovered alcoholic. And let me touch on that for a quick second, because I introduced myself as a recovered alcoholic. Let me talk about what that means real quick, because there's a lot of debate or controversy or whatever where there fucking shouldn't be, because it's clear right here in our book what it talks about. You know, so the book uses the word recovering once and recovered over 20 times. They're trying to drive home a point, right? And what it says is we are to introduce ourselves to the newcomer as somebody who has recovered, right? It says that we are a group of men and women who have seemingly recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. So let me explain what that means, right? I worked the steps, okay? Seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. Mind and body. My body, when I'm physically detoxed, that's covered, right? But the mental obsession that I have that constantly drives me to want to pick up a drink, that's not removed until I get through this step work. But once that's removed, I have recovered. And then I introduce myself to the newcomer to bring them hope that it is possible. And you hear a lot of people like, man, I'll be fighting this the rest of my life, or I'm 30 years and I'm still fighting through this. If you're still fucking fighting, just go fucking drink already. I mean, I'm telling you, I'm not going to struggle the rest of my life. If that's what this program offered, I'd have been gone a long time ago. That's not what it is. This program offers freedom, okay? This program offers hope. But that's based on the willingness to put the work in, to work these steps, to make it a way of life. If you do that, it's a guarantee. You know what I mean? And a lot of us are skeptical, but for me, it took seeing somebody who I knew was as bad as me because I saw him on the streets and then saw where he was at a few years sober. And I had the same kind of thought Kenny did, like, well, fuck, if that junkie could do it, then I can do it, you know? Sorry, kind of all over the place, some things I get passionate about. But so that's why I introduced myself as a recovered alcoholic, because that's what the book tells me to do. And the way I live my life is based on what the book tells me to do. It's a design for living for people like us. And if I follow this methodology that's laid out in this literature, then I'm guaranteed to be happy, joyous, and free. It doesn't mean every moment I'm like skipping through the aisles, walking on water. Shit happens. I'm married, right? I get in fights. You know, but it teaches me things, right? Like to pause when agitated or doubtful, you know, ask God for the right thought or decision. And that's this whole thing is learning how to live on this basis. And that's also why, and so I'm not knocking anybody who says, you know, that they're recovering, especially if they're early in recovery and they haven't gotten through the steps yet, because you are still recovering. But if you've gotten through the steps and the mental obsession has been removed, you're as Framer says, you're as recovered as you're ever going to get, you know? And we might now have some other things that come out sideways. And, you know, we're always spiritually growing. Don't get that twisted. There's a difference between spiritual growth and being recovered. You get recovered, you keep spiritually growing. The book also talks about how what we truly have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition, right? One definition of the word reprieve means a postponement of a death sentence. So what I truly have is a postponement, a daily postponement of a death sentence based on what I do for my spiritual condition. So if I stop carrying the message, if I stop working the program, if I stop getting prayer and meditation, stop going to meetings, stop helping the newcomer, stop taking my inventory, stop doing all the things that I'm taught to do in this program, then I will become unrecovered and I'll get real sick. And like I said, I'm not the type of motherfucker to hold on to white knuckle. I'll drink, I'll shoot dope. That's what I do. There's nothing more natural in the world for an alcoholic or drug addict to do than to pick up a drink or a drug. What the miracle is that we don't feel like we have to when we're tapped into this solution. And that's a guarantee. I don't care who told you what. It's a promise. Because I spent my whole life searching for something that could keep me from picking up a drink, from putting a fucking needle in my arm. Nobody wants to do that shit. You know, if you're in this room, then you've reached that place where you know what it's like to not want to do it anymore, but not be able to stop. And that's what the mental obsession is about, right? So, you know, and I work at a treatment center now, and you know, people call me like, hey, you know, I'm just looking for detox. I'm like, we don't do detox only. You know, we have a 30-day program, because even 30 days isn't enough, but that's a place to get physically detox and get started on some step work and get the ball kind of rolling. They're like, no, I just want to detox and be good. That's not something we offer where I work. I'm not knocking anybody else, but that's not something that we offer where I work, because we understand the threefold of the disease, right? Spiritual, physical, and mental. And it outlines it in the very beginning of the book, right? The doctor's opinion, before fucking page one, it talks about it, right? And it drives home, it gets into that. So we have this physical allergy, right? Once I pick it up, put it in my body, I can't control that outcome, right? The definition of a physical definition of an allergy is an abnormal reaction to. So a normal person picks up a drink, they have a drink, sometimes they don't finish it, drives me crazy. And then they go ahead and they go home and they do their thing. I'm not gonna lie, it doesn't drive me crazy. I loved it when they did that shit, because I drink it when they left. You know what I mean? I keep it real with y'all. I'm like, oh, I gotta use the bathroom, leave a tip or some shit, you know, running there and drink. That's a lie too, because I drink their shit and then I take the tip that they left. You know what I mean? That's what I did, right? I was grimy. So, you know, I pick it up and I put it in the book talks about, right, like if there's a couple different ways, right? I got to pass all the tests, right? Because I try to find the loopholes in this shit, but I got to pass all the tests that they got in there, right? If when we put it in our bodies, we can't control how much we put in there every time. Oh, that's where they get me, right? Because I think there was this one time where I did, you know what I mean? And I try to hold on to that for years. Or if we honestly don't want to, we find ourselves drinking and using again. You know what I mean? So if I can't stop on my own, and stay stopped. Or if when I put it in my body, I can't abruptly stop and do that every single time, then I may have a problem. Self-diagnosed, but that's just what the literature says for you to take a look at. So that's my physical allergy, right? But if all I had was this physical allergy, then once I got incarcerated, once I got detoxed, once I got out of the psych ward, why the fuck would I pick it back up? I see where it gets me every time. I'm not a stupid person, right? None of us in here are stupid. You got to be smart to keep on that game. You got to be a hustler to stay on that shit. You know that. So I'm not a stupid person. I know where it leads me. It's out of my body. Why do I keep picking it back up? Why do I keep doing it? Right? So that's what our literature talks about, being the mental obsession. I got this strange mental blank spot, right? I can't bring it in my mind with sufficient force, the pain and suffering of a week or a month ago, right? So what does that mean? I can think about, oh man, that was terrible. I can't believe I went and did all that shit. That was crazy. You know what I mean? Because with sufficient force, it's not enough to stop me. I got this strange mental blank spot that will convince me that I'm different, I'm unique, I'm special. It'll be different this time. My life circumstances are different now. I'll drink this instead. I'll shoot this instead. You know what I mean? Whatever it is, I'm trying to convince myself. And that mental obsession will always win. I can never outthink it because it is my thinking. Does that make sense? I can't outsmart it because the smarter I get, the smarter it gets because it is me. You know, it's my way of thinking and it's ingrained in there. And you can look all that shit up now. Now they've proven it, all right? So this book was like way before its time. All this stuff was just based on experience. And now they've proven scientifically how it carves out neural pathways and does all this type of shit and hijacks the limbic system. I'm not going to get all the science of it, but you can look it up if you want to. It's proven that that's the way that we operate. So I've got this mental obsession and I've got this physical allergy. And now I understand that. What do I do about it? Well, for me to even be willing to do anything about it, I had to get honest with myself first. And the only way I could get honest with myself was by looking at my experience, right? And that's what somebody helped me to do. I'm in treatment. One of my biggest downfalls, I'd be in and out of treatment. I could not admit I was an alcoholic, you know? Like, I know I'm a junkie, you know what I mean? I don't think anybody shoots dope and they're like, this is just recreational, you know what I mean? But I would be like, man, I can handle a couple of beers, you know? And that would be my thing. I remember being like, I'm on pills and I'm blackout drunk and I'm smoking weed and I'm posting on Facebook. Man, it feels so good to be sober, you know, because I wasn't shooting dope. And my family's like, we're so proud of you. You're doing so good. You know, you're putting on weight. Did you crash the vehicle? Okay, but you're doing great. And that's what I convinced myself. As long as I'm not doing that bad, then I'm okay. And I want to pause right here in my story real quick just to point something out about us alcoholics. There's one of two things that we do, right? Because I have this mind, I have this trick of the ego that tries to convince me that I'm different. So if you're in this room, there's a good chance you might be saying one of two things. I'm way worse than this guy, so this will never work for me. Or I'm nowhere near as bad as this guy, so I don't need this program. You have a mind. Let me put that in my words. Let me put that in my words. There's only one motherfucker on this planet who is actively trying to kill me, and it's me. It is my mind trying to convince me that I don't need this, that I'm different than you guys, that we look different, we talk different, we come from different backgrounds. None of that shit matters. We have a common problem, and that's our alcoholism. That's our addiction. And to me, we use them as two different words. It's the same shit, right? Because all of them are symptoms from this internal condition that we have going on. That's our common problem, right? What binds us is this common solution that we have that we get to tap into together. So I would always say, I've got 2 DWIs and I'm driving blackout drunk, knowing I'm going to prison if I get pulled over, right? Because that's Texas, right? That's the law. Third one prison a year. Knowing I'm going to prison. Still can't stop doing it, but I'm not an alcoholic though, you know? I mean, just looking back, so many crazy things. And man, I don't know what happened, but anyways, let me get back to my personal story. So here I am. I'm back out here again. I'm living in this shack, and then this dude, he was like this nicest guy, and let me just preface it by saying that I have gone back and made amends to him, and I paid him back what he asked me to, and we made things right. But he's this great, super nice guy, so I take advantage of that shit, right? I use my street mentality. He lets me move into his nice house, renting a bedroom, and I say renting because I never paid, right? I would just Debo that shit. You know what I mean? Like, he was a real nice, you know what I mean? He's a real nice guy, and I'd be like, yeah, I'm gonna get that money. Don't trip. No, it'll be good. No, you don't need to ask me about it, bro. You don't need to ask me about it. You know, just trying to put fear, I don't even think I can do it anymore like how I used to, because I'm trying, anyways. So here I am, right? And I'm pulling from everybody around me, just causing chaos and just using people. And I'm just in this little closet, right? Just like 24/7. And I'm drinking and I'm shooting speedballs and I'm doing all that shit that we all do. You know what I mean? And I'm miserable and I'm crazy. And I got to this place just internally, because I've been homeless before, I've been incarcerated before, I've been through all that kind of stuff. The external circumstances aren't what kept me using, because I would drink and use no matter if it was rainy or sunny or, girlfriend, no girlfriend, imaginary girlfriend, I'm seeing shit, whatever. It didn't matter what it was. My external circumstances aren't what kept me drinking and using. That internal condition that drove was, I would use those things as excuses, but my internal condition is what kept me drinking and using. Well, the great news is that my external conditions also don't keep me sober today, right? The flip side of that, it's the internal condition, and that's based on healing through this program. But so my circumstances are wild. They're all this kind of crazy stuff, like always. And here I am. I don't know. I felt my brain snap. Like physically, I felt it. Like I'm out there. I weigh 120 pounds. I'm all just tripped out. And I remember thinking like the aliens were coming to get me, right? But I was never scared of the feds. You know what I mean? Like, they're not looking for me. I'm not big enough. But the motherfucking aliens, though, they trying to get your boy. But the throw off thing is, right, is I never believed in aliens. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't call them aliens. My friends would be like, what are you freaked out about? I'm like, they're these people. They're not people, but they're kind of after me. They can see me. They're like, you talking about aliens? I'm like, no, bro, that's crazy, dog. No. But they're out there. And so anyways, I had overdosed several times throughout my life, all kinds of trips to the emergency room. And, lucky me, my body's resistant to Narcan. I've known that since I was 19. I remember OD'd one time and I kind of came to in the back of the paramedics. I remember hearing the lady say, I've already given him so much Narcan. I don't know if I can give him any more Narcan. And I thought, oh, fuck, that's not good. And went and I'm back out. I come to, the doctor's calling me Narcan, man. And he's like, you're very lucky to be alive. And this is your second chance at life. And in my egoic, narcissistic alcoholism, he tells me it's my second chance at life. And I look at this doctor who just saved my life. And I said, bitch, you don't know me. I'm like a cat. I got 9 lives. And then I realized I was the only one laughing in the room. My mom was in the corner crying. Because that's what we do. I'm self-absorbed. I'm destroying people around me. I'm not caring about that pain. I'm only caring about how I feel, what that next fix is. So anyways, now I'm 29, right? So this is right before I got sober, or this is how I got sober. I OD'd again. I've had several grand mal seizures from coming off opiates. I don't know what happened this time, but I did my thing, was at a dealer's house, overdosed and had a grand mal seizure simultaneously. What? You know what I mean? Doing big. Anyways, so I'm like, yeah, I didn't even know that till I was a year sober, because he got locked up and he got out and I saw him. And he's like, bro, I got a video of you started fucking seizing this shit. I didn't know what to do. But I know what he did do. He picked me up and took me to the hospital in my car and left my ass on the fucking front porch and stole my dope, my wallet, and my car. I still never got any of that shit back. But I got to treatment. And I remember knowing, damn, them motherfucker got me for everything, right? Well, here, look, I'm in the hospital and I come to, and same thing, right? So I was legally dead. The nurse told me this story afterwards, right? She's like, we couldn't bring you back. You were legally dead. The Narcan wouldn't work. They were using the defibrillators. They couldn't bring me back. The doctor came in and got ready to call time of death. And one nurse said, I'm going to try one more time. And she did. And she brought me back too. And they're scrambling. And even then, I didn't believe her. I was like, bullshit. So she pulled the blanket off me and my toes were blue. And I've never been that cold in my life, And so right then, something internally just kind of broke, right? It just kind of snapped. I was just so fucking done. I was done with this life. But what's more than that, because I hear a lot of people say, this isn't a program for people who need it. It's a program for people who want it. I think that's bullshit, because I needed it for a couple of decades. I wanted it for that last decade. You know what I mean? For 10 years of shooting dope, for 10 years, I was an IV dope fiend. I wanted it. I needed it and I wanted it. This program didn't work until I was willing to do what it said to do. It's about the willingness. It's about the action put in. Not my feelings, not my desires, the actions that I put into it. So I come to, and she tells me all this kind of stuff, and I'm tripped out, and they're like, do you want help? And I'm like, please. And they send me to this treatment center. So I go in there. And I just remember knowing that homeboy had jacked me for everything, and I didn't even care, right? I'm like, charge it to the game and take all that stuff. I don't want anything to do with any of that anymore. I'll do whatever it takes to stay sober. And I meant that shit, which doesn't matter. I followed it through with action, and I continue to follow it through with action today. That's what matters, is what my feet are doing. Because I can talk a good game, but what are my feet doing? Am I putting it in? So I get there and I I'm dope sick, and I'm, coming off everything you can imagine. I'm in a psychosis, right? I'm in detox, for after everything's out of my system. I peeled all the skin off my face and shit. They were like drug testing me while I was in there. Like, are you still on something? And I don't know why I did that, right? Because I'm sober. I'm in some kind of psychosis. The best I could figure is like I knew I couldn't stay sober, so maybe I was looking for a new motherfucker under there. Maybe he could stay sober. I don't know, but and I'm in this delusion, right? I got my face all bandaged up like a mummy, and the people in residential, I'm in detox, they see me and they're like, "What happened?" And I'm like, "I cut myself shaving." It's like, "Oh, all right, dog," whatever you say. Man, but I was so broken and so willing. I come out of the psychosis. They get me out of detox. I didn't eat or sleep for like 8 days. They finally get me do that physical part of it, right? And immediately get me plugged into some step work, right? Get me jumped into it, right? And I remember thinking like, I've already done all this kind of step work stuff before. I already understand 1, 2, and 3. Let's start on 4 because it's gonna be a big 4 step because I'm the worst one out there. All that shit. I'm the worst. I'm the worst. I'm the best. I'm the worst. At the same time. So he's like, well, hold up, let's slow it down. Let's take a look at step 1, right? What is powerlessness, right? How are you powerless, right? Because it's a multi-part step, right? He said, what's the powerlessness? I said, man, I can't like hold down a job. You know what I mean? Like I'm running amok on the streets. He's like, no. That's the unmanageability. What's the powerlessness? I'm like, all right, check it out. So I keep getting incarcerated. My family doesn't want anything to do with me. He said, no, that's the unmanageability. What's the powerlessness? I'm like, okay. So I've never had like a family of my own, never had like a long-term girlfriend either, right? Like heroin was my bitch and I only cheated on her with meth and all the other shit, but never, you know what I mean? Like, so I'm like, this is, and so no matter what I say, he just kept, that's the unmanageability. What's the powerlessness? And I'm like, but if I don't, obviously I don't know, like, help me out, like lead a horse to water. And he's like, he helped me to understand that on my own power, right? I am going to drink again. Just because I'm in treatment today, just because I'm in a meeting today, doesn't mean I'm not going to drink. I'm going to drink again on my own power. I'm going to pick up dope again on my own power. And I don't have to believe that in this moment. I only have to look at my history. What have I always done? I have always picked back up again. That's my history promises me. It's a historical fact. It's a mathematical, statistical fact. Well, I don't care what you want to look at it with. It's a fact that that's what I'm going to do because it's what I've always done. So it helped me to understand what the powerlessness truly was, right? And so this second step, right? Am I willing to believe that there's something else that can change it for me, right? Well, I've tried everything that I know. I've tried to fix it inside. I've tried all these different things. So how badly do I really want it? Am I willing to even concede that there may be something bigger or better than me, right? That may be able to make this happen. And back then, man, I had to throw all my former conceptions of God out the window, and I had to make it very basic, right? I just had to start with I'm not God. Because no matter what kind of relationship I think I had with him, obviously there was too much of me in the way for him to enter. You know what I'm saying? Or however you want to phrase it. So, yeah, I'm willing to concede that. And these steps have grown a lot deeper, but this was my first time through them within like 25 days, right? And it's a continuous job that we keep doing, so don't get it twisted. But then we jump into step 3, right? Like, can I make a decision to turn my will and my life over to care of that? You know what I mean? So what does that look like? My will is everything inside of me, and my life is everything outside of me. So am I willing to, on a daily basis, whenever I make a decision, try to pause and ask God what he would have me do and follow that direction, and then leave the outcome up to him no matter what it is? There's no such thing as a bad circumstance. That's just my perception of it, right? Because it's God's will, so it must be perfect, even if it causes me heartache. I can still accept it as being perfect because it's his will. And I can move forward with that. And this 4 step, right? We write down all this shit. And so you hear different people talk about different places in the program where they started to kind of feel this freedom. And I don't say relief, I say freedom. Relief is temporary. Alcohol and drugs give me relief. The steps don't give me relief. The steps give me freedom, right? So for me, the freedoms came in the 4th column of the 4th step. That's when I first started to feel it, right? Column 1, fuck everybody. This whole world, all you people who wronged me, all these things that did this to me, all that kind of stuff. Second step in, what all you second column, what all you motherfuckers did to make me feel that way and all this kind of stuff. 3rd column, right? What it affected. Now we're taking a deeper look. What it affected, how it made me, this. And then the 4th column, right? Setting aside everything that they did, what was my part in it? And as I got through this, when I was being honest with it, I realized in every circumstance in my life, I had some kind of role to play in it. And it was usually a lot bigger than I wanted to admit to. And I got a lot of relief in that, right? Because I realized the book says, right, that at some point I'd set the ball rolling, right? So now that I know that I'm the common denominator in all this chaos, it's a beautiful truth because it's within my domain to stop causing it. If I stop kicking the fucking can, if I stop kicking the beehive, I'll quit getting stung. You know what I mean? That's not perfect. Something that's learned throughout time with the program. And the fifth step, I get honest with somebody about this. And they sit there and they help me to see the truth of it, the things that I can't pull out of myself, that I was unwilling to be honest about. They keep it real there. You know, I get to that sixth step and I become willing to have God remove these things that the book calls objectionable, right? So they're no longer working. So I look at my anger, my hustling, all the shit that I held on to that I thought is what I needed to survive. And I realize that I'm not doing too well right now. So maybe all this anger and all this deboing and all this psychological warfare and all this hustling and all this running the streets that I thought I was so good at, maybe it's not so good for me. Am I willing to let that shit go? Now, don't get me wrong. My grand sponsor, I've been sober like 4 years and 3 months, some change, something like that. My grand sponsor still, he'll be like, boy, you're in a step 7 crisis right now. Because sometimes I try to take that shit back, you know, and I try to live back in that again. It's like a natural thing for me. If I'm not constantly waking up and giving this back over to my higher power, and I'm not constantly still getting plugged into this program, that shit will bleed back in. That's my natural defect. Causes a lot of arguments with my wife, right? I get real defensive. I get real, you know what I mean? Like, fucking, you know, I had a bad childhood. You know? I'm not going to let you in my heart. You know? You know what I mean? Like, you're going to hurt me, so I'm going to hurt you first, you know? And this type of shit that causes chaos, you know? But thank God for the program, because I can sit down and write more inventory, right? Because I'm pissed off at her and I see, oh, okay, that's where I was being a dick again. I did it again. Go make amends. So step 7, right, I asked God to remove this from me, right? So that action is I'm aware of these defects now, and I'm willing to let God have them, right? And I'm walking with him and I'm letting him take this from me. And if I don't know what to do in the next moment, I just do the next right thing. You know, if I'm doing the next right thing, then I'm not hustling, I'm not stealing, I'm not lying, I'm not hurting people, because that's not the next right thing. So step 8, right, we take this list, we made the list and we took inventory. So all these motherfuckers that I hated, this whole world, now I get to make amends to them, right? I had to with the people who I harmed, who I didn't have any kind of resentment and connection to. And this is a real important thing I want to point out too, because you'll hear some of this watered down message that talks about, you know, went and made amends to others except for, went and made direct amends except for when it would harm them or others. Well, I'm an other, so I can't make that amends because it's going to harm me. Look, I don't know where the fuck y'all learn English, but the very definition of the word other literally means anybody but me. I'm the only motherfucker who's not an other, by definition of the word. Putting that out there real quick. So if I'm afraid of it harming me, that's just my ego. That's just my fear that I'm living in. The way you combat that is with faith. And the way you show faith is with action. So I step out there. And if I make this amends and they cuss me out and they tell me to go to hell and they tell me they want their money back and they want all this kind of stuff, it says we take the bit in the teeth. That means I don't argue. And I don't say, but I didn't do, but none of that shit. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. And I do what they ask me to do. And if I don't want to do it because I'm afraid to get my feelings hurt, I hope it hurts my fucking feelings. That's nothing compared to the damage that I caused them. My feelings should be hurt. That's the way I learn my lessons. It talks about, you know, that pain is the touchstone of all spiritual growth. If I don't feel that pain, then I'm not going to be willing to do anything to change it. But if I feel that pain and I embrace it and I live by this spiritual program of action, then I can heal through it and be a benefit to other people. Then I'm happy, joyous, and free. That's the way that this shit works. So if I'm afraid to do that shit because I'm going to get hurt, I deserve to get hurt. Now, I'm not talking about going to an old dealer and being like, I jacked you for that kilo and then he's going to shoot me. None of that kind of shit, right? That's not what I'm talking about. Bring it up to your sponsor, any kind of specific circumstances like that. There's even a whole page talking about getting incarcerated and stuff and having a family. So look, just get with the sponsor and do what the book says. But that's where that freedom kind of comes, right? We can go anywhere in the world, look anyone in the eye, right? So then I get to this 10 step, right? And the 10 step, that's where I'm constantly taking my own inventory, right? So I got the spot check throughout the day. And I'm just kind of like looking at what kind of dick I am and asking, you know, for like God, his direction, you know, and how I can be a better person and staying in this communication and this contact all throughout the day, right? That's a 10 step. Well, a lot of times you hear in meetings, they read the promises. They call them the promises. Really, those are just the 9 step promises. Every step has promises, including the first one. The first step promise, you're fucked on your own. That's the first step promise. No, but hey, every step has promises. My favorite promises are in the 10th step. The 10-step promise. I wish they read those more in meetings, because the 10-step promises, it promises, right? It says that we've been placed in a position of neutrality, right? It says that we are neither for or against alcohol. We've ceased fighting everyone and everything. Now, that's a place I never thought that I could be in. Not an angry, miserable, street-running junkie like me. I never thought that I could experience that. Not only the neutrality concerning the drugs and alcohol and not having to have it, but being able to have it in front of me and not need it. And hey, you want to drink? No, thank you. And it usually is with drinking. Nobody ever calls me like, hey, we're watching the game, shooting some tar. You want to come over and watch a game with us? Never happens. It's never happened to me. But you'll hear it a lot. Come over, have some beers, whatever, all that kind of stuff. I'm good. I appreciate it, but no thank you. You know what I mean? To be able to be in a position of neutrality around that's a powerful fucking thing that I never thought I experienced. But also to be in a position of neutrality around people. You know what I mean? To be in a room full of people and not have to, just be dominant and be aggressive or be whatever or try to conflict and looking for that, but just to be neutral, just to be at peace. It's powerful promises there. 11th step, right? So 11th step, this you get it all. People get all tricked by this, right? Because where they put it in the book, and it's like, hold on, what is that? Where is it at? Take my inventory on what step and what page. So your nightly inventory is technically that falls to the 11th step, right? So when we retire at night, that's when you get into that 11th step. You know what I'm saying? Retire at night, review your day, and I'll be honest with y'all because that's what I was taught to do. That's the worst part of my program. That's where I feel the most. I ask Kenny to keep me accountable. I'm not the best at that. I'll be real tired and I'll do it in my head and I'll go through the questions in the book and then go to sleep. And I need to be doing a better job of that. When I'm doing better, I'm writing it out like I should be, so I can really review it and letting go for that day and moving forward. So I'll be honest that I'm not 100% about any of it, except for step 1. I'm fucked by myself. I know that one. But on that step 11, my nightly, all I can tell you is my experience is that I get real squirrely sometimes because it's the weakest part of my program. Wherever I'm lacking at is where I'm going to feel it. And so sometimes the next day I carry in the shit from yesterday. So I could just tell you from my experience, from my personal discomfort with that, that I'm growing towards getting better at that, because it needs to be a nightly thing and I don't do it every night, as it says. But when I do, boy, I can breathe deep. I got that serene. I got that peace. I can go to sleep. And then 11 goes into upon awakening, you know what I'm saying? Or on awakening, not upon awakening. It's not a fairy tale. On awakening. And so I get into that, you know what I mean? And that's where I get in communication when I first wake up. Because I'm an alcoholic and an addict. And something about my brain, when I fall asleep, I wake up and I'm just a retarded baby all over again and I don't know nothing. And I just lose everything that I had from yesterday. Or no matter how spiritual it was, it's gone. And I wake up and my default is running, which is selfish, self-pity, angry, whatever it is. I'm constantly like that. So when I wake up, it's my obligation to get to God before my mind gets to me. That's what I need to do. I jump into prayer and meditation as it's outlined in the book, right? Page 86, what it says in the book. And I carry that into my day, and then it reverts back to 10 and boop, boop, boop. You know what I mean? And then you get to 12 step, right? And so haven't had a spiritual awakening, right? As a result of these steps, not as a result of all of them except for 4 and 9. You know what I'm saying? As a result of these steps. So if I'm doing these steps and I'm living by the first 164 pages, and let me back that up, the doctor's opinion up to 164. If I'm living by that, if I'm reading it, if I'm studying it with a sponsor and I'm staying plugged in and I'm living by that shit and I'm working these steps, I'll have a spiritual awakening, right? And I'll have this freedom, this peace that comes with it. It's a guarantee. It's what works for people like us. And I've tried everything else. And then the next 2 parts of that step, try to carry this message, right, to an alcoholic, right? Try to carry this message. Try to be of service. Try to carry to other people, not this like, I'm so grateful to be here tonight because I was going to drink if it wasn't for this meeting. And I'm just holding on tonight. And if I could get to 76 phone numbers, I'm going to call every single one of you at 3 a.m. so that I can say something. No. That I get to come here to share a fucking message of hope, right? That I get to live a life of freedom, a beautiful life today. And I'll jump into that external, what it looks like real quick. But then let me talk about the other part of that step, right? Practice these principles in all of our affairs. That's not easy, right? But it says to practice these principles. What principles? The principles I learned working these steps and in this book. So I can't be out here talking about I'm 12-stepping and I'm living by these principles if I didn't fucking read them and I don't understand what they are and I don't have somebody taking me through them and I'm not actively living in it. But if I'm doing that, right, then I'm trying to practice principles in all my affairs. Most of my affairs, some of my affairs, the affairs I want to, the affairs that don't concern women or money. No. All my affairs, right? That's the next part of that step. Then I get to live in this life of perpetual freedom. And so let me talk about real quick what the externals look like. And I just touch on this part, right? So I know a lot of times, man, I'm not knocking them, but a lot of speakers will start getting into and then I got the truck and the house and all that kind of stuff. Me, when I talk about what it's like now, I get real big on the internal condition. And I'll tell you why when I end it. So I'll tell you that that today, I have a great job. Man, I dropped out of high school. They expelled me from middle school 2 weeks before graduation, and in 5th grade they didn't let me walk the stage because I was a bad motherfucker. I was just a little shithead. You know what I mean? So never in my life had I ever experienced any kind of graduation. You know what I mean? Not 5th grade. They didn't let me graduate in 5th grade. I was in 5th grade. They said, nah, dog, nah. Matter of fact, I was so unruly that my entire life, I was only allowed to go on one field trip. And it was to a church. They were like, send that boy to that one. But the rest of them, because of my own behavior, right? Me trying to lash out this internal condition I'm pouring out on the world. So 5th grade, didn't let the boy graduate. Junior high, high school, dropped out, run the streets, all that kind of stuff. Got sober. I put 2 years of sobriety together. God kept me sober for 2 years, and I stayed plugged in, wonderful friends, and with this fellowship and staying active, working with other people before I even took a look at anything else. But then I went back and I got my GED. And then I ended up in college. Matter of fact, Kenny's wife, Emily, she signed me up for college. She was like, you got your GED now, you're going to college. She's, you know what I mean? God putting people on my path. I'm all nervous and shit. She signed me up. You're going to college. I spelled my damn name wrong. I had to go to the registrar's office. Like, it's me, but that's not how you spell it. Like, here's my ID. It was a whole mess. And this past summer, I graduated, right, with my associate's degree. A fucking college, you know what I mean? Like, to me, that was never, I graduated college, right, with a 4.0. That's not me. You know what I'm saying? That's this program, this structure that it gives me, this way of life that I get to live by doing that right thing. And sometimes for me, doing the right thing is doing my fucking homework, unless there's an addict or alcoholic who needs help, and that comes first, It's like recovery, family, and when I say recovery, that includes God, because it's one in one. It's the same shit. So recovery and God, family, you know what I mean? Then work and everything else comes, there's this intuitive thoughts that God gives with that. But to be able to graduate with that and then be working on my second degree, I work with the treatment center I work at. I was in admissions and I still do a little work in there, but they gave me a promotion. I never got a promotion in my life. Gave me a promotion and a raise and all that shit. I work in administration now. I'm a fucking accountant. You know what I'm saying? You would have trusted me to count your gum, bro. I promise you. They got me running the finances in that bitch. You know what I mean? It's just such a blessing to be able to give you an opportunity like that. You know what I mean? I live in a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. It literally has a white wooden fence around it. I shit you not. Like a Hallmark movie and shit. I got a beautiful wife who puts up with my shit. I got a 6-year-old little girl. Her biological father died from this disease. He overdosed on heroin 3 years ago. This shit is real. And I see the pain in that little girl's eyes, and I have for the past 3 years while raising her. Don't get it fucking twisted. I'm her daddy. And I don't ever really tell anybody that I'm not her biological father, except when I'm sharing the story so that y'all know one thing, that absolutely this shit is a killer. And we absolutely leave chaos and damage in the past. But that this program can restore and heal somebody else, and that God can work through to help to heal that trauma. It's absolute possibility. Recently when we were pregnant, we were going to have a little boy. We lost a kid. You know what I mean? Heartbreaking. Absolutely. A few weeks later, which was just a week and a half ago, found my wife in the driveway, hemorrhaging, bleeding out, complications from the miscarriage a month and a half ago. Call 911, rush her to the hospital, emergency surgery, all that kind of stuff to save her life. And yes, I'm heartbroken. And yes, I'm worried at that time, but I'm praying to God. Whatever your will is, you know what I mean? Whatever it happens to be. And the beautiful thing about this program is through no matter what, how crazy something may be, holding my uncle literally as he takes his last breath, or something as small as getting my fucking teeth extracted from all the damage I did and getting root canals and all that kind of shit done with no pain medicine because it didn't work because my fucking roots are too small because I did too much dope. And not needing to pick up a drink or a drug because of the physical pain or because of the emotional pain or because of the fear of losing my wife and what that would mean for my daughter to lose 2 of her biological parents. All these things that come into my mind, I get to turn that over to the program. I get to reach out to the fellowship, and they send people who come over and they talk to me, and we talk about it and we pray about it and we have faith through it. And the program, I don't have to pick up a drink or a drug over it. But like I said, man, today to be able to, right, I own 2 vehicles, fucking insurance on both of them. You know what I mean? Beautiful home, beautiful wife, a kid, great job, education, getting another one. I mean, anything you could imagine, great friends, anything that you could imagine that this life has to offer. Today I have in my life all the external things that you could possibly ask for, I have today. And it's a direct result of this program. Somebody who was homeless, who had no hope, nobody wanted to be around, now has all these blessings as a result of this program. And the reason why I touch on all this stuff last is because if you heard nothing else tonight, please hear this. All of these blessings are wonderful and they are beautiful. And this life is meant to be enjoyed. And I'm so grateful that I get to enjoy them. But none of those things are my fucking recovery. None of them are my recovery. They are all byproducts of good recovery. Okay? Those are all blessings that come into my life because of recovery. If I start focusing so much on those things that I decide I don't need to come here and talk tonight, or I don't need to work with the newcomer, or I don't need to go to a meeting because my life's too good, I got school, I got family, I got to take her to the park, I got too much shit, I can't look at my recovery, I'll lose all those things. Those things aren't what I get my happiness from. Those things are what I get to bring my happiness to. I don't have to take from them today. I get to give to them. But the only way that that can happen is when I'm plugged into this program, right? God doesn't give me anything that I hold and own and control and possess. He only gives me things that flow through me. And the only way they'll continue to come is if I continue to give them away. They can only flow through me if I give them away. So I've got to keep my recovery first. That's what this shit's about. Happy, joyous, and free. Thank y'all for letting me speak tonight.